Welcome back everybody to our studies in the British Empire for AQA A-Level History. This video is going to spend some time continuing looking at the various different case studies of individuals associated with the empire and the relationship between these individuals and the empire itself. And we're going to spend some time talking about Sir Henry Bartle Frere today. Now, he of course is a predominant British colonial administrator, and his career, of course, was influenced and significantly influenced British imperial policy in both South Asia and South Africa. So let's think firstly about his time in the Indian administration, and then we'll start thinking about his relationship with South Africa, as well as the Anglo-Zulu War in 1879. So, in terms of beginning with the Indian administration, he begins his career as a chief commissioner of the Sidar from 1851 to 1859. Now, during this period, there was a focus on economic development, on things like infrastructure projects, the fostering of trade relations, and the aim to try and contribute to the region's growth. And so, generally speaking, from 1851 to 1859, we know that there is a period within India that is quite tumultuous, the Indian Mutiny, which of course takes place between 1857 and 1858, which is sort of deeply embedded in this time period. But for him, this period was relatively stable. His governance was relatively stable, which meant that he was able to himself send reinforcements to the neighbouring Punjab, where it was a little bit more violent. In 1859, Frere was appointed to the Viceroy's Council in Calcutta, where he advocated for agricultural development, education reforms, and his tenure concluded in 1867, when he returned to England and became a member of the India Council, which would be continuing in his involvement in colonial policy all the way until 1877. So his period of time in India was from 1857 to 1860, or 1851, should I say, to 1867. At which point he spent some time continually involved in England as a member of the India Council, up until 1877. It is there where he is then appointed as the commissioner, the High Commissioner for South Africa, between 1877 and 1880. This was his period where he was tasked with essentially implementing a plan to federate British colonies and the Boer republics into a united entity. So the aim here is to basically unite all of these different areas. And Frere himself believed that the Zulu kingdom under King Kishawu posed quite a significant obstacle to the establishment of this confederation. And so what he did was he dealt with the approaching of dealing with Zulu tribes by being quite provocative. And this is really where we see he's only in power for a couple of years before we start to see the issuance of quite clear provocative language and quite clear provocative demands against the Zulu people, which then of course contributes to conflict. So in December of 1878, Frere issues an ultimatum to the king, the Zulu king, essentially demanding that there is the disbanding of the Zulu military system, as well as a number of other concessions. The aim of the ultimatum was that it was to be designed to be unacceptable. It was one of those ultimatums that they knew would not be accepted by the king. And so when the king fails to comply, then Frere is able to order an invasion of Zululand, which takes place, of course, in January of 1879. The ensuing Anglo-Zulu War saw initial British successes, at least at the beginning, with things like the Battle of Islandwana on the 22nd of January 1879. I'm sure I've butchered that pronunciation as always. we see this is contrasting the initial British successors, because this battle was particularly important in the sense that it resulted in a defeat for British forces, and this setback would eventually be righted, would eventually be rectified by the British. The British forces would eventually defeat the Zulus in the Battle of Ulandi in July of 1879, leading to the capture and the exile of the king. Ultimately, though, the problematic aspects of this conflict is that Frere's role in provoking the war was done without explicit authorization from the British government. So he did so basically without telling the British, which led to his censure and his recall in 1880. And so when we sort of think about his legacy and the sort of controversy of Sir Henry Bartle Frere, we have to think about, of course, the fact that his tenure in South Africa is subject to quite significant historical debate, given that he was instrumental in early efforts to suppress the Indian Ocean slave trade, at least, when we see, for example, in 1873 with the treaty with Zanzibar. But he is most known for his quite aggressive policies in South Africa, because it, of course, disregarded the indigenous sovereignty of the people of Zululand. It was also done without the consent of the British government, and so his actions during the Anglo-Zulu War, particularly the manipulation of diplomatic tensions and the military campaign that ensued, was viewed as a sort of emblematic example of imperial overreach and the lacking of sensitivity of local dynamics that was particularly present at all times during the British Empire, but was especially exemplified, shall we say, under the work and under the tutelage of Sir Henry Bartle Frere.